Getting into photography is hard enough, but then when you factor in having to make the right investment in gear and in lenses and in camera bodies, it makes it all the more scary. As I've grown in my understanding of what different gear can do and how different lenses can affect my images, it's the same way as a fashion designer understanding different materials and understanding different combinations. The more you have in your arsenal of knowledge, the more you're able to deploy when you need to. When I started in photography, I started with a Canon Rebel T5i. It was a super basic camera that I bought from Costco in like 2014. It was about $600 for the camera body, a lens, and it also included some like long zoom lens. And quite frankly, it wasn't a great camera, but it was something to have. But as the saying goes, the best camera is the camera in your hand. So by the time I actually picked up my T5i and tried to learn how to use it, it was 2019. And so this camera was about 5 or 6 years old. It was already a little bit outdated and it wasn't really taking good photos, but it served me so well in learning how a camera worked, how to shoot manual, how to do all these things. And then from there, I wanted to pour my entire life savings into a nicer camera. And at the time, I don't really know why I wanted to do that. I think I was just excited. And so I did. I researched cameras for several weeks and I landed on the Canon 60 Mark II. It was a full frame, semi-professional camera that had come out about 2 years beforehand. And with that, I also bought a Canon 24-105 f4 lens, which at the time was really exciting for me because it was like a L series lens, I think, and they have like a little red stripe at the end, and that's like Canon's top line. And so I dropped literally all my money on this, didn't really understand what the lens did or what it could be used for, but I knew it would be versatile enough, so I bought it. But looking back, here's what I wish I had known. We'll start with lenses and focal lengths. Focal length is the millimeter value that's assigned to your lens, and what that number basically means is how wide or zoomed in your lens is gonna be. So if I have a 24 millimeter, which is what I'm shooting on right now, I'm getting a wider picture. And so this camera is probably about 4 feet away from me right now, and you're able to see all of this all around me. But if I had a 50 millimeter lens, it would be significantly tighter. So it would be a lot more zoomed in. There would be a lot more compression in the background, which is what is kind of like that portrait mode effect, where it really separates the subject from the background. And then as you go up a number, it gets more and more zoomed and more compressed. My personal favorite lens that I used a lot before I got into sports was a 35 millimeter prime. A prime lens is a lens that doesn't zoom at all and basically just stays at one fixed focal length. But the benefit of a prime lens is that you can get a lower f-stop, which means that you'll be able to get a significantly thinner depth of field and you'll be able to operate in lower light situations. So that's the benefit of prime lenses. Whereas zoom lenses, which are what I primarily use now, I primarily use a 28-70 and I primarily use a 70-200. And that for me covers my wides all the way into my tights. So I can shoot a player directly in front of me if I'm sitting on the baseline, and I can also shoot a player on the opposite side of the court and still have a really good quality. But the trade-off is that I can't really go below f2.8. And what that means is in arenas, since it's typically a lot darker than it is outside, and since I'm having to bump my shutter up, I have to have my ISO at around 2000 or 2500 in order to compensate and create a brighter image. But sometimes when I'm not just capturing game action, I'll throw an 85 millimeter prime on there, knock it down to f1.8 and just let it rock. And those moments are always so fun because I get to really just see what basketball looks like through a different lens. It's not a zoom lens. So the benefit of a prime lens like a 35 millimeter is that you have a lower f-stop, but the downfall is that you cannot zoom in or out at all. The frame is wherever you are standing. But not all prime lenses and not all zoom lenses are made the same. Let's take, for example, the Canon 7200 f4 and f2.8. If I go onto B&H's website and I look up Canon 70-200 millimeter lens, I'm met with two different products from Canon. One is the RF 70-200 2.8L IS USM lens, listed at $2,599. Then I scroll down a little bit and I see the Canon RF 7200 f4 IS USM lens, listed at $1,499. So what you're seeing there is an $1,100 difference for 0.2 f-stop. Why is that the case? And the reason is because typically lenses with a lower f-stop are made with better glass. So the actual image quality that you're getting out of these two lenses, say I shoot both of them at f5.6, the f2.8 lens is always going to look better because it's made with better glass, typically has better features in it, typically it's a little bit sturdier, and it's just a higher quality lens. So you're not just paying $1,100 more to get a lens that goes down to 2.8, you're also paying all that money to get a better image out of that lens. Now let's talk about how that affects prime lenses. A Canon 50mm 1.8 costs $125. A 50mm 1.4 costs $399. But a 50mm 1.2 costs $1,399. But that 50 f1.2 is waterproofed. It's made with far superior glass, and it is, in my opinion, worth the extra $1,000 that you pay for it. Thousands of people before me have done YouTube videos where they're shooting off between 2 different lenses or 3 different lenses all in the same family. So I highly suggest you watch those before you decide whether or not you want to invest the $125 or the $399 or even the $1,400 in a new lens. Research in this case is going to be your best friend, so you don't have buyer's remorse after buying your first lens. Now, if you want to get into sports and you don't know what lenses to buy, there are 2 lenses that, in my opinion, you absolutely need to have in order to shoot sports well. And that is a 24-70 f2.8 or some variation of that, and a 70-200 f2.8 or some variation of that. If you don't have those 2 lenses, and if you're in a gym shooting on a lens that's 5.6 through 7 point something, your photos are not going to look good. And it's really, really hard to save photos that are just shot poorly because of the gear. And there's a saying that I heard very early on into my career that goes, camera bodies come and go, but lenses last forever. And I promise you, the things that you can do with a really, really crappy camera body, but a really high quality lens is insane. A 70-200 f2.8 on that Canon Rebel T5i that I started out with would have made a beautiful, beautiful image. The camera bodies are important and are absolutely a good investment down the line, but I cannot encourage you enough to buy good glass first. And so then the next question becomes, which camera ecosystem do I want to buy into? Do I want to buy into Sony? Do I want to buy into Canon? Do I want to buy into Nikon or something else? And there is no clear answer. And honestly, a lot of it is up to preference. My personal preference is Sony. I'm shooting this video on a Sony a7S III, and I think the image it produces is beautiful for video. I shot sports on a Sony a7R IV, and I thought the photos it created were gorgeous. The way it handled low light was gorgeous. But when I went to go shoot weddings with a Sony, I noticed that there was a lot of trouble getting colors to look real and contrasty and alive. Whereas when I shoot with a Canon, anything outdoors in natural light or in the studio, the colors are always spot on. But shooting in arena with the Canon, I really struggle with. I struggle to really get the colors accurate under the arena lights. I struggle with low light. I struggle with sometimes even autofocus. But whenever I'm shooting arrivals or anything in a studio, that's when I'm really thankful that I shoot Canon. So please don't take my word as absolute. If you have the ability to rent a camera body and a lens for a game or for a gig, do it. By all means, do it. Get your hands on as many different lenses and camera bodies and brands as you can, because it's really going to allow you to make a more educated pick. The world of gear in photography and filmmaking is scary, but I promise you that it's worth pushing through. Because once you get to a point where you feel like you understand what different prime lenses do, what different f-stop values do, how you can use a vintage 50mm lens on a digital camera, the amount of possibilities for you to create are endless, and it's so exciting. Great artists and great athletes don't need the best cameras or the best shoes or the best basketballs to perform, but it helps. And why would you not position yourself in the best way to create the best possible image that you can? So find what gear you like, find what gear excites you, find what gear works for your situation, and make the investment. It's a scary jump, but I promise you, when you have that camera in your hands and when you're taking images with it in the beginning, it's so exciting and it's so rewarding knowing that this is something that you staked on yourself and you really believed in yourself in. So that's all for this one. I'll be back next week, or maybe sooner, honestly, who knows? Maybe later. Peace. Also subscribe and like this and share it with your mom. Thanks. If you have the ability to rent a camera body and a lens for a game or for a gig, do it. By all means, do it. Get your hands dirty with these cameras. I don't like that I said that. I really hope this wasn't focused the whole time, because as I'm looking at it now, it looks like it might not have been. But anyways, Second Pairs, bye.